2 minutes silence for. I expect all of you to observe about 2 minutes silence for him. Mark of respect for him. Okay, thank you, friends. Actually, Doctor, I have very sweet memories about working with him. Uh, Way back in 1987, 88, I think he came and he did a project with us in IPR. I think maybe he had just finished his MSc or so. So during that project time, we had a lot of discussions with each other. So I was really shocked to hear this news. So he's quite young and he was very quite energetic also. Okay, so that is about Dr. Tushar Pandya. He did a project with ITR for almost a year, I think. Okay, for coming back to lecture, so I've written down the equation of motion for the electrons and ions. So basically, this is the equation for in the presence of electric magnetic fields. Then you have a pressure gradient. Then you have got a collision term. So also to simplify the matters, we first said that we will study only cold plasma. So in this approximation, you'll see that gradient of pressure is neglected, so it is zero. And also we said we took cases where there were no collisions, and with collisions how the wave functions get modified. So dispersion relation gets modified because of that. So those things will take care. And also we said that we will concentrate only on linear theory. Linear theory, the main meaning there are no nonlinearity taken into account. So basically, factors like this, this and about this. So if I take both perturbed quantities, it will become square of perturbed quantity. So similarly here, so u square term. So whereas here it is ub, both are perturbed quantities. So therefore, those things we have avoided. We take only linear. So what will come have only the basic magnetic field without the perturbation part, whereas U can be perturbed. Okay. Also, because it's a linear equation, linear theory, so what we have to do now is, while you couple the Maxwell's equations, you'll have to, wherever you get dou by dou t, you have to write minus omega, and wherever you get del, you have to write it as. So that is how you can convert all the differential equations into algebraic equations. So that is how you make things linear. So today we are going to discuss a case where last time we have discussed about a cold plasma without magnetic field. So it was not a magnetized plasma. So last time what we saw was cold plasma. This was one thing. So therefore gradient of pressure is zero. And also we said B naught was not present. So no external magnetic field. But today what we'll do is we'll see the moment you put in magnetic field, external magnetic field, how the equations get modified and what kind of waves, extra waves you observe now. So those things we need to take into account. So for today's discussion, it is cold plasma anyway, but we have a external magnetic field. So B0 is not equal to zero. So that is the case we are going to consider. So the moment there is a presence of magnetic field, there will be spatial anisotropy because there is a magnetic field, external magnetic field applied. So therefore, the plasma particle motion will get modified by the magnetic field. So that is how you see anisotropy in the forward and backward directions. So to derive the dispersion relation, what is dispersion relation? Basically, it is omega, which is a function of A. So this is exactly what we are going to derive. So because it's a linear theory, we have I omega mu. So gradient of pressure I've neglected because we are considering cold plasmas. So this is one equation. The second equation is so we can actually the three equations you can now rearrange them and put it into just two equations, and then I'll show you how it can get simplified. Basically, you are clubbing the three equations and making into two equations. All what I am teaching you right now is basically from uh, Beaten Code, so you can actually go through that book if you have. So this is the chapter on cold plasma waves. Now the two equations are basically given by So this is one equation. The second equation is 1 plus I. So that is how those three equations now has been reduced to two equations. Now the coordinate system that we are discussing about here, I think I'll write down the coordinate system. So basically it's a Cartesian coordinate. You have z direction, this is y direction, this is x, and we are saying b0 is in the x direction, well, z direction, and wave is propagating in the xz plane. So it is in this plane. So this is k propagation vector. So this will have k parallel and k perpendicular. So that is the system that we are talking about. We have to remember this when we actually solve the equations. Now, we have the coordinate systems. So now these equations can now be put into proper terms, and then we can reduce those equations. So I'll write down the final equation. So all this thing is given in written code. So you can go through it, and in case there are doubts, we can discuss that part. But what I observe is basically it's a cumbersome algebra, but pretty straightforward. There's nothing, no complications. So they are quite straightforward. Only thing is too many terms and too many things to worry about. So in that sense, it is little cumbersome algebra, but otherwise quite straightforward. So this will reduce to, I can write it down in terms of matrix, all the three equations, because you have got x component, y component, and z component of the equations. So those things can now be written as in the matrix form. So that is basically given as so this is the matrix. So x term, y term, right? So like that we have got this 3 by 3 matrix. Now here we have got ex, ey, ez. They are the perturbed quantity which is equal to I e.
Sir,
Yeah,
uh, last term 1 minus, there is sine square or cos square?
sine square e.
Sine
Yeah,
square. Yes, yes, sir.
please just follow it, because all this thing is given in written form. So I'm just showing you how dispersion relation can be got for a given condition. For example, in a condition where you have an external magnetic field and a plasma. So that is the 3 by 3 matrix into, these are the perturbation of the electric field in the x direction, y direction, z direction, which is equal to this. These are the velocities. So perturbed velocity in the x, y, and z direction for the electrons and ions both. Actually, to simplify, sometimes we'll take into account that ions are not moving, so that it becomes, the equations become little more simple, and then we'll include the effects of, in case you put into motion of ions also, how they get modified. Now here, this eta, this term is basically Pse by omega. This is nothing but refractive index of the medium. Of the plasma. So you will get equations in terms of the full dispersion relation you will get in terms of eta, which is the refractive index. And plasma is a dielectric basically. It's a dielectric tensor. So that is how eta and plasma, they are related. So you'll get finally an equation. So now basically we'll have to solve for, basically we'll have to eliminate x, ux, uy, and uz. So when you do that, again this matrix, and write it in the compact form. So then what will happen is, basically you are trying to eliminate this. Then what you get is, this into ex, ey, ez equal to, because you have now eliminated the velocity terms. So now in this, I'll tell you what these factors I have added. S, D, P. I'll just explain to you what they are. And this, you know, is the refractive index. So to get a non-trivial solution, non-trivial in the sense that E, any of this component, is not equal to 0. That is the non-trivial solution. So for that, what is required is that the determinant of this matrix has to vanish. So putting that into perspective, what you get is S So that's the finally this will reduce to an equation which is quadratic in eta square. So here the terms that I have added is basically I'll have to describe to you what is S, P, alpha and all. So R is basically S plus D, L is S minus D, so right circular polarized wave and left circular polarized wave. That is the reason why it has been written as L, R and L. So finally when you analyze what kind of waves are produced, electromagnetic waves, you'll see that they are right polarized and left polarized. That is the reason why the terms have been put as R and L to make it simpler. So now this is a quadratic equation in, so it will have two roots. So those two solutions basically will give the waves that are propagating inside the plasma. Whereas, once you get solution for this equation, you'll have two solutions, and then for, because it's square, again you'll have two values. That basically gives you two different directions in which the waves are traveling, propagating. So basically you have to solve this equation. So now this solution is basically done by two scientists. One is Appleton and Hartree. So they have solved this equation, and the way they write is A the huge equation has been now reduced to this, where A is basically S sin theta plus P cos theta. B is R L sin square theta plus S P 1 plus cos square theta. C is P R L. And solution basically for this is say minus B plus minus root of B square minus 4AC by 2A. You will have to put these values here. So that is how you will get solution for theta square. So we'll write down the final equation for that. So theta square is nothing but 1 minus 2 A minus B plus C divided by So when you put all the values for A, B, C, and all those things, what you get is write down what is X and Q. Actually, Q is given as U minus Y square sin square theta. So this Q is basically given as this. So this is what has been derived by Appleton and Patrick. Okay, the expression is basically given by these people. So basically what they've done is, this was essentially applied for understanding how the radio frequency waves are propagated and reflected or absorbed in the Earth's ionosphere. Okay, so essentially this analysis was done by these people to understand the wave propagation in the ionosphere, including the Earth's magnetic field. So it's valid for high frequency compared to ion cyclotron frequency. So all frequencies we are talking about greater than omega Ci, which is the ion cyclotron frequency. So what we'll do is we'll also use the same system now of the same expression, and then try to understand how plasma waves are propagated perpendicular to the magnetic field, parallel to the magnetic field, and things like that, and then try to analyze whether there is a resonance or there is cutoff, and I'll tell you what exactly is meant by resonance or cutoff of the waves. So essentially, when the refractive index tends to 0, you have cutoff. And when it tends to infinity, it's called resonance. So these are very, very important concepts. You should know for each wave what is the frequency at which it will get cut off. Because this is very essential because, for example, you must have heard about laser fusion, you know. So what is happening in laser fusion? So you have a laser beam, actually being hit on a target. So as soon as the laser beam strikes the target, it produces a plasma. The moment energy is deposited here, a plasma is being produced. So the plasma will have a gradient of a pressure gradient basically, or density. Density is varying this way. So a plasma has been produced. So now when the wave is trying to enter, it has just started producing plasma at the edge. And as it enters, you'll see that as the waves enter, it will enter regions where the density is continuously increasing. So at some point, what will happen is there is a cutoff. So these waves cannot travel any further. They'll get either absorbed or they are reflected back. So that is happening because of the cutoff. So these waves have cutoff. So that is the reason why you cannot continuously keep producing plasma by a laser beam, because of the gradient in density, it will come to a region where the density is so high that the waves cannot propagate any further. They either get absorbed or reflect back. So you are putting actually energy into in the system to produce more and more plasma by the laser beam. But then the plasma is basically throwing out all the incident waves, So the laser is not able to produce the kind of fusion that is required. So very, very important thing, and that is coming because of the cutoff. It is reaching a region where the density is so high. We'll discuss this more in detail. When does the wave get reflected back? During in our discussion, we'll do that. So, so cutoff and resonance. Resonance is also very, very important feature. For example, if I want to heat the plasma, I should know okay, at what frequency the plasma particles will resonate, which means maximum absorption of energy. So both these terms are important, cutoff and resonance. Cutoff because when you heat a particular target by a laser beam, you'll see that there's a gradient of pressure or density. So the moment it reaches a layer where the density is quite high, the waves cannot travel any further. There's a cutoff. And because of this cutoff, either the waves get absorbed there or they are reflected back. That is exactly what happens to the laser beam. So this is one reason why laser induced fusion has issues. This is one of the issues. There are many more issues, but this is one of them. Okay? There is no, you cannot continuously keep heating the target to produce plasma. At some region, you'll see that after the plasma has been formed to certain of some temperature, you'll see that there is a layer which has very high cutoff density. That's called cutoff density. We'll evaluate what is cutoff density. So all the waves will get reflected back from that region. So this is very important. And resonance is also very important because we want to heat the plasma to temperatures where fusion has to take place. So you have to know what are the species inside the plasma and what frequencies are efficiently absorbed by these species. That is important. So whether there is a resonance or cutoff, what you are looking for is resonance, because all the energy that I am putting into the plasma has to excite the particles or heat the particles. So there has to be a resonance. So both these terms are important. So today I think we'll stop here and we'll continue with this maybe next class. So that is about waves and plasmas. So this is about Appleton-Hartree equation. So we'll use this now. In our next class, we'll discuss propagation of waves parallel to the magnetic field. We are simplifying the problem by saying we'll first understand what are the waves propagating parallel and then perpendicular to the magnetic field, and then at an arbitrary angle. We'll study all the characteristics of these waves, but simplifying situations. It should not become too complicated, otherwise the whole thing will get confused. So first case we'll take parallel to the magnetic field, then perpendicular to the magnetic field, and then we'll also discuss if they are at an arbitrary angle to the magnetic field, what happens, how the waves are generally propagating, or whether they are getting absorbed or they're getting resonance or whatever. all those characteristics we'll study. So next class basically we'll study the propagation of waves parallel to the magnetic field. So that is about what is there in your syllabus. But thing which is out of your syllabus. Today I want to discuss something, a topic on which I have worked for almost 30 years in IPR. So that is called tomographic technique. This will become very useful for you people also if you work in laboratories where people are working on plasmas. So what is this technique? Why do we use this technique, tomography? So essentially now I'll just describe to you what exactly is the problem. First the problem and then the solution for the problem. So basically this is the plasma. So this is the plasma which is hot enough. So it's emitting all kinds of radiations. So what I'm catching is basically in one of the regions like X-ray. So what I'm doing is I'm putting detectors all around. So there's a pinhole camera. So I'm putting detectors all around. There are many detectors. Okay. Now each portion of the plasma is being observed by various detectors. So now, what is actually the problem? See, what you are doing is basically, if you take one particular detector, this detector. So line of sight is basically this. So all basically because of the dimensions of the detector, it will see a very small volume of the plasma. So all emissions coming from this region of the plasma is observed by this detector. So like that, various detectors, so they'll observe various regions inside the plasma. But now this detector, what it measures is basically f of what is this is center. This is the center of the plasma. Okay. So the perpendicular distance, this is rho. So if I vary rho, I can put various detectors. So if I keep changing the rho, it means I am putting various detectors. So each detector will have a particular rho. So that is, and this is making an angle with the x-axis. This chord is making an angle of phi. So this is phi. So if I vary phi and rho and phi, I have scanned the whole plasma. I'll put many detectors and scan the whole region of the plasma. So that is how. But what I'm getting here as a signal is basically a integration of right from this point to this point. Because plasma is present in the whole region. So what I'm measuring here is an integral L to L prime of a quantity which is called Rg of R and dl. dl is basically along this chord. I'm taking a small element. So this is dl. And then if I integrate, it will come all around the core. So I'll get the total signal. So what I'm measuring, and this quantity is basically the property of the plasma. At each location, at each point R, this is theta, this is R. So this has a emissivity. How much of X-ray is emitted from each point inside the plasma. So that will depend upon density, temperature, number of impurities. All those factors will decide each point inside the plasma will emit how many X-rays. What is the intensity of the X-ray produced? So that is basically this quantity. It is called the emissivity of the plasma in the X-ray region. So every point inside the plasma is emitting a particular amount of X-ray, and that is integrated over a small dl is a very small element, and that I'm integrating from L to L prime. So I get the total signal coming from this whole region, and that is what is measured here. And this is called brightness. Brightness. This is called emissivity. Emissivity of X-rays, and what you are measuring is brightness. So externally, what I'm measuring is this, but what I'm interested is in this, because I want to know what is the plasma doing. So, if are there some hot spots which is emitting more X-rays? So, are there some hot spots inside the plasma? So, that is the information that I am interested. I am interested in emissivity, but I cannot measure emissivity because I am outside the plasma. So, what I can measure is only brightness. I can measure only the line integral, not this quantity. But what I need is this quantity. So, this is the problem of tomography. How to get this quantity? By measuring this. So the doctors do exactly identical. See, what they are doing is they are scanning the brain or heart or whatever, any organ of a patient. So what is done is, so you have a patient, and this is the brain organ of the patient. So what is done is, there is an X-ray source here. And there's a detector placed here. So the source and detector, they are mounted on the same shaft. So they move along together. Patient is on a table here who's not moving. So what is happening is, now X-ray source can be put here, so on. You can keep on changing the position. So what is happening is the X-rays are passing through the organ and then going to the detector. So what is detector measuring is the amount of attenuation of X-rays in the organ of a patient. So by this, what is doing is, I can scan the whole organ from all angles by changing the detector and source position. So this is the computed X-ray tomography, which the medical people do. So this is called medical tomography. You will see that there's a difference between plasma tomography and the medical tomography. So here, what you can do is, you can scan the brain from all angles, whereas here I cannot do that. That the problem being, it's a plasma. And how is the plasma produced? There is a vacuum vessel in which you have produced plasma, and there's a tokamak here. So the whole, I will show you how the tokamak is. So this is the whole tokamak machine in which you are producing the plasma. So this is the plasma. So inside I have got the transformer and things like that. Probably I have not discussed what is the tokamak, but this is essentially what is the tokamak. You have a vacuum vessel, you have a central solenoid here. So inside portion is totally occupied. And what I'm putting is detectors only this outside. I cannot put detectors inside. So some portion of the plasma I'm not able to see. Whereas in medical tomography, the doctor can see from all sides. Any angle he can put and he can scan the brain from all directions. Whereas I cannot do scanning of this plasma by because I cannot put detectors inside this portion. I can put detectors only outside. I can put all over here. And again, only some locations I can put detectors. So there's a restriction in the plasma tomography. So when there are restrictions in taking data, and when you want to analyze this and finally get all the pictures that the doctors get of the patient, it's difficult for me because my mathematical techniques have to be even more sensitive and also take into account in the region that I cannot take data from inside. I can take data only from outside. So my mathematical techniques have to be so precise and so that I can do some interpolations and things like that. So the kind of mathematical techniques we use here is much more sophisticated than what the doctors use because they don't have to have the issues are not enough, not too much of issues because the organ of the patient is available to him at all angles, so he can scan any angle, which I cannot do. So something like this. See, tomography can be of any. I'm talking about plasma tomography, but it could be astrophysical object. Suppose I want to study the sun. What is exactly happening inside the sun? I can do the same thing there also. Only some techniques may change. I can do tomography of nuclear reactor fuel. So I can do tomography for any damn problem. Because the advantage is I don't have to open the system. Even in the closed system, I'll be able to get all the information about the interior of a system without opening it. Just by sitting outside, I can get all the information about what is happening inside without interfering with the system. So that is the advantage of this tomographic techniques. And tomography is applied for almost any field, every field. ONGC people use, well logging, or people working in the area of earthquakes, seismography. All those people will require this techniques of tomography. So this is a very interesting and important technique. You can use it for any industrial applications also. Chemical industries use a lot of this tomography. They want to know what is the different phases of the chemicals which are used in the chemical reactors. Well, that will change the whole process. So how much in liquid phase, how much in the gaseous phase, all those details, and then spatially how they are distributed. So this is in the chemical industry. So similar thing, any field you can think of, you can do a tomographic measurement. Someday, if I have time, I'll describe to you what is the mathematics of this whole technique. It's a very involved mathematical technique because it has to take into account that I'm not having full amount of data. With scarce amount of data, I should be able to get the same amount of information that the doctors get. Okay. Same thing is done in either you talking about the PET imaging or magnetic resonances. So any of these imaging technique basically uses the tomographic technique. So any questions about this or our topic in plasmas, waves in plasma? So anyone, if you have doubts or you want to add something, some clarification, please give your feedback. Otherwise, I'll not know whether I'm reaching you people. Okay, any one of you, any feedback that you would like to give? I can share some of the information on tomography. I have a very good talk which I had given long back, of course, on tomography. So I can share that with you people. It gives you a detailed information about tomography and where all it can be used, which fields, and how to modify things to get information. All those details are available, so I can share that talk of mine with you people. A very interesting technique. So this is the technique that I had developed for our Aditya tokamak to understand what exactly is happening inside the plasma. What kind of magneto-hydrodynamic instability is taking place. So very challenging job because these instabilities are very short-lived. So time scales are very short. They're all in microseconds. So all my techniques have to be very sensitive. And then space scales are also very small. So the whole turbulence is taking at a very small scale, space scales, milliseconds and millimeters. So that is the amount of resolution that I require. At the same time, I should see the whole plasma because anything interesting can happen anywhere in the plasma. So I should not miss out any portion of the plasma. At the same time, I should see every portion very minutely. I should be able to see because these instabilities are very short scale and fast time scales. So they are quickly born and they die also very fast. So, but they have done the damage to the plasma. So that is the reason why I'm interested. Though they are born and they die also, but before they die, they do a lot of damage to the plasma. So I'm interested in that particular physics. So that is given only by tomographic techniques because you have to know exactly what is happening inside the plasma. To go inside because it's a hot plasma, I cannot put any probes inside because the moment I put a probe, it will burn. Because the temperature of the plasma is so high, I cannot put any probe to probe the plasma. So I have to use, it's a passive technique because I'm just observing, I'm putting a detector here and just keep waiting for what is coming from the plasma. I'm not interacting with the plasma. There are other techniques like I can put a laser beam passing through it to measure the density. But there I am interacting with the plasma. Here I am not interacting. It's a passive technique. I'm just waiting and observing what is coming out from the plasma. And that is, fortunately, it is X-ray. And any hot plasma will emit lots of X-rays. So I have to put the right kind of detectors and the instrumentation part in such a way that I don't miss out any interesting thing happening inside the plasma. Okay, maybe I'll stop here and wait for your feedback, if any.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah, Heath,
Uh,
Heath.
Sir, I have one doubt. Sir, what is the difference between a tomography and spectroscopy?
Oh, spectroscopy is different. See, spectroscopy will give you from every point distribution in wavelength. See, what is done is, so any point inside the plasma is going to give you a distribution of this kind. It may have some emissions. So what I have drawn here is basically intensity of X-rays versus energy of the X-ray, or it could be wavelength also. Wavelength will be opposite. So basically it is telling me intensity at each energy. So there's something interesting happening here, which means there's an impurity here. Some iron impurity or chromium impurity here will emit certain radiation, and that radiation has a spectrum. So the full spectrum I can know by knowing the full spectrum. So this is the spectrum, wavelength versus intensity. So by knowing this, I can know what is the temperature of the plasma. This will give you temperature of the plasma. Intensity will give you how much of impurities present at that location. In this location, how much of impurity is present by the intensity and by the width of the line. This is called line broadening. This line broadening is coming because of the Doppler shift, Doppler broadening. So that is coming because the plasma is hot. Hotter the plasma, you'll get larger and larger. So more. So this will keep on increasing. So that tells you that temperature is increasing. So this broadening is basically proportional to the temperature of the plasma. So this is spectroscopy. Whereas here what I am doing is my detectors I am taking in such a way it is not sensitive to energy. I am not interested in detectors which are sensitive to energy. I just want very high intensity for the same signal, not varying signal. If it is varying signal, I know that is the spectroscopic part. But here I am not interested in the spectroscopy. I am just interested in knowing number of photons coming out. I am not interested in their energy. Okay, so that is the difference. You are able to resolve the energy. So that is spectroscopy. Whereas in imaging, you are choosing detectors which are not sensitive to energy. I'm not interested in the energy information. Only thing is, any photon that is produced inside the plasma should be able to produce signal in my detector. That is important for me. Whereas here what is happening is, the detector will take that signal, find out what its energy is, and then put that energy in a particular bin. So that is how it constructs this whole spectrum. It's a very sophisticated detector. Whereas here I don't want sophisticated detectors. I want very fast detectors. It should be able to respond in nanoseconds. Whereas this thing will not respond in nanoseconds, because the detector is going to take some time. It will absorb that energy and get all the information about that energy, and then it knows what is the energy of that photon. It upon its energy. So for this process, the detector is going to take some time. I am not interested in that because I want to know immediately what is coming out. The moment it's a X-ray is produced, it should be immediately detected by the detector without any loss of time. because time is important for me here. Because instabilities are very fast. If I put this detector here, I'll miss a lot of information in time. So here, did I answer your question?
Yes, sure, sir.
There's a lot of difference between, but both are important, of course. Spectroscopy will tell you how X-rays are distributed in energy. That's also very important. But here I'm not interested. Here the interest is whatever is emitted should be able to produce a signal in my detector. And quickly, within nanoseconds, it should produce signals. Because time is premium for me then. Because the tomographic pictures, it tells you the dynamics of the whole plasma. We have done this also. My group members do this also, spectroscopic part also, because it tells you what are the various impurities present inside the plasma, in what quantities and where they are present. Are they present in the core of the plasma or are they towards the edge? All those details I get from this information here. But here I will be interested in knowing the hotspots. What are the regions of the plasma which is producing more X-rays? More X-rays means there's a increase in temperature. So it is something like hotspots. Like sun also has hotspots, you know. So if you are interested in knowing how the hotspots are distributed in the sun, you should do a tomography of the sun. It is done. Sitting on the earth, I can do tomography of the sun. For any star, I can do that. So this technique is very powerful. I'll send you this talk on X-ray tomography, but it gives you a full picture about this technique, how it can be used in various fields. Not only X-ray tomography, it can be used as optical tomography. I can use it as microwave tomography. Each of them gives you wealth of information. Okay. Any more doubts or clarifications? If there are no more questions or doubts, I think I'll like to say goodbye. See you people again soon. Okay. I'm calling it a day.